Hi there, I'm back with another tutorial for this Vlogmas season. This time I'm doing a date night makeup look tutorial, as well as a little backstory as to why I keep toxic family members at bay. So normally I would not share this, but recently I was talking to my brother and he was telling me how I really need to share my story. By the way, click like, subscribe, and don't forget that notification bell so that you do not miss another video. I'm starting off with the Smashbox Primer Smooth and Blur because it just smooths and blurs everything. I'm going to curl my lashes with this eyelash curler because they needed to be done. And then you're gonna see that I will struggle putting on the velour lashes, but more on that later. Back to the topic at hand. Yeah, so your girl here has some toxic family members that I no longer speak to, and the decision came as a series of actions that was done to me that I felt like I did not want repeated to my daughter. When I was younger, my dad met my mom. They got married, they had me, and then they broke up, which is cool. Lots of families go through these situations. Nothing special about that. The thing is, my relationship with my father started off very rocky, and he wasn't there, plain and simple. He was the definition of an absentee father. He was not there. I just grew up. It was me, my mom, and my two sisters. Now, I had seen my mom struggle, and as a young girl, seeing a woman do everything, and I mean every single thing, by herself, it was very heartbreaking because oftentimes I felt like a burden, and I felt like I just added more weight to her life. Now, as a mother, I know that's not the case, but for a long time, I just really felt like a burden. I often wished that, I had a place to escape to, because I felt as though I didn't have a place where I could belong. I did not have a place where I could just be, where I could just live. And it was just really annoying, very heartbreaking, very sad. And so, yeah, my relationship with my father was not great. It was non-existent. And so when I got older, I reached out somehow, somehow my mom found his number. So I reached out, called him, and, broken promises. Now, my father has a habit of telling me he's going to show up for me and not doing that. So that was pretty much it my whole life. Hence the reason why he wasn't really there. So that followed. I graduated high school, asked him to be there. He said he was going to be there, and he never showed, much less ask for where it was just like, yeah, I'll be there. But he never once asked like, hey, okay, give me the address. What's the time? What's the date? He just wasn't there. And so that was that. Then I kind of was just like, I went through a lot of years as a young Christian being angry and feeling guilty for being angry at my dad for just not being there. And so that was really hard to reconcile, and adding to the shame and the guilt, it was just a lot for a young girl who's becoming and coming into her own, to have a positive outlook on what a relationship with a man should be. And the struggle that kind of helped shape me. I don't think anybody should ever go through that struggle, but that's the reality of my life. So that was that. For years, it just kept on happening, and eventually I remember just being really angry. And then fast forward to being around my brothers. I met a brother that I didn't like. I had known of him, but I hadn't met him before. So that I remember the summer that I turned, I want to say 19, 18, I met my brother, and that was really great. My father actually brought him. Of course, that required a talking to from my mother. She had to pretty much like yell at him, being like, yo, like, show up for your daughter. And then he showed up. My brother got married, I believe, a few years later, and my father was there, and so we kind of had like this family get together. I gotta say, prior to that, I did hurt his feelings because I didn't cuss him out using curse words, but like I cussed him out. Like I let him know exactly how I felt, which is a big no-no, because it's seen as a disrespect, and I was labeled as disrespectful. But at this point, I had this thing. I remember being 18. Yeah, I was 18 when that happened. And I remember that conversation being like, if I die tomorrow, I want to make sure this man knows exactly how I feel. And so I did that. I think that was like the beginning of my independence, or like the beginning of finding my voice. Not necessarily being comfortable in that, but just the beginning of finding my voice. And I really did not care. Like my mom was there, and I remember calling him like a sperm donor and all that stuff. But I really, till this day, I have no regrets, because I really did tell him everything and how I felt. But I was encouraged to keep him involved in my life. Be a good daughter, keep him around, do your best to have a good relationship with him. So my brother got married, I think a few years later, and my father was there, and, being a good daughter, I gave him the time of day, being very angry, but trying my best to be respectful and, having that door open. But I think also, while having that door open, I also knew that this may never be the relationship I want. Like, I think that while I had that encounter with him at my brother's wedding, that I think I had it in the back of my head that, you know what, like, the fact that I have to keep fighting, or it felt like I had to keep fighting to see him, it just felt like this is whack. Like, I don't want to do that. And then later on, finding out that my brother gave him an ultimatum to actually show up and be there for him, I thought that was like ridiculously whack. But anywho, at my brother's wedding, he actually came close to apologizing. He never really said I'm sorry, but he was like, you hurt my feelings. And I was like, oh, okay, well, bet. I mean, that was the intent. At least you heard me. I didn't say all that, but that's how I felt. So, going on from that, it was kind of like the beginning of, Sandy, it's time to let go. At the time, I was also seeing my now husband, and my husband was just, at the time, my boyfriend, but just very kind and attentive, and I didn't have to beg to have him in my life, and he really showed me what love is supposed to be like. And I'm not even talking about like, oh, sexual or anything like that. It was just having the space to be myself. And I remember thinking, like, that's just the being able to feel like I belong, like feeling like I actually matter to someone. That's what I wanted forever, and this was the first time I'd experienced that. And so I began to but there was a certain level of standard, a code of ethics that I wanted to live by, and I wanted those around me to see me and respect me for me. And for the most part, I had that like all around. My siblings were amazing, but it was just that one man. Like, he just couldn't do that for me. He couldn't stop lying. He couldn't stop saying he'd show up and not show up. He couldn't stop, gaslighting me. I felt like, you're making me feel as though how I feel is not valid, and you're refusing to change. And I think that was the biggest thing, is accepting that this is this is him. He's not going to change. And I didn't like that. So I started keeping my distance, being cordial, but really keeping my distance. And I remember receiving a text on my birthday, like, not a text. I remember getting an email. On my birthday, and he wished me a happy new year. And y'all, I was so annoyed, because I'm like, why couldn't you just wish me a happy birthday? You emailed me on my birthday. You know when my birthday is. Why couldn't you just wish me a happy birthday? Why say happy new year on my birthday? Like, it makes no sense. For reference, my birthday is on the 12th, so it's 12 days after New Year's. It was just weird. So I'm like, I don't have time for games, because I'm your daughter, not your girlfriend. This is stuff you do when you want to play games, and I'm grown now. Like, I'm an adult navigating adult things, and here you are playing games, like mind games. So, now I'm like really on guard, and I'm keeping my distance. Few years later, I get married, before that, I went and I introduced my husband, then fiance, to my dad. I really just ambushed him, found him, and said, "Hey, I'm in Montreal. Would you like to meet up?" And I'm like, and he's like, "Yeah, for sure." We met up, and that's how he ended up meeting my fiance at the time. He didn't really like that. I personally did not care, because I didn't want to give him the opportunity to flake on me again. So at this point, it's like two can play that game. And that was that. Then when my husband proposed, I remember just saying, I remember telling my mother that I did not want to invite him and the reason I didn't want to invite him was because I didn't want my heart broken. I didn't want to expect him to show up and be there for me as a dad, knowing full well that he's let me down time and time and time again. And so, but of course, everybody's telling me you got to be a good Christian. Be a good Christian. Be a good Christian. I'm going to say that again because some of y'all don't understand the cultural and toxicity that comes with those words. So I went ahead and I invited him. I remember being at work and dealing with cashier. I was a cashier and dealing with customers and having to deal with this man who just did not want to have any conversation about this wedding that I was having. And I could not wrap my head around the reason why this person was just so flippant about the whole situation. Like I remember just trying to get him the address and being like, asking him for the address so I could send him the invite. And he just honestly said, talk to your brother. He'll give you the address. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm getting married in less than 6 months and you can't even anyways. So I invited him because everybody told me to. And lo and behold, he did not show up. Not one appearance. And that was like, it wasn't heartbreaking because I knew it would happen. I knew it would happen. But this is what was the sealed the deal for me was the fact that my other brother got married, and he wanted to come meet not my in-laws, but he wanted to meet his fiance's family, and it was supposed to be like this big, hey, let's meet the family. He was supposed to be there, and he texted me saying, hey, I want to meet you and your kid. I had my first daughter at the time, and he said, I want to meet you and meet my grandkid. And so I was like, okay, cool, bet, like that'd be great. Not really holding much out for it. But I had it in the back of my head that I wasn't going to say anything to my daughter because I didn't want her to suffer this whole, like, is grandpa coming kind of situation. And so he didn't show. He did not show. My brother was vexed. He was annoyed. And for me, I had kind of like this foresight. When you have this epiphany of this is going to keep happening and you're going to have to explain to your daughter why grandpa didn't show. And I remember it was like a light switch, like, we are not doing that to her. We are not doing that. And I remember that being that was it. I blocked him. I unfriended him on Facebook. That was it. I just couldn't allow this negative energy to perpetuate itself. And I didn't want my daughter to think that it was okay to allow people who just didn't see your worth, like who just didn't see you as worthy of an explanation or as worthy of, being involved. I didn't want her to think that mommy was okay with letting people walk all over her life, because I had seen that growing up when I was younger. I saw people do it to my mother and I was like, this is not okay. It's not okay for me, and it's never going to be okay for me. And I don't want my daughter to have this level of standard that people can just walk in and out of her life whenever they feel like it. And that for me was it. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. Now, if this was one of those, like, every once in a while it happens, it'd be one thing. But it was all about the standard. My daughter deserves to have people who love her for her. And same thing applies to me and to all of us. I believe that we all deserve to be loved, and to be loved the right way. You should never have to beg to have someone show up for you. You should not have to beg and give ultimatums for people to show you how much they love and appreciate you. And so my brother eventually did get married to his wife. She's amazing, and her family is just so. I'm just so grateful for him and his in-laws. And I remember, because it's a she's Congolese, so they value family very, very highly. And when they had the dowry wedding, I had to stand in as the eldest because I am the eldest on my father's side, and they allowed me to stand in. It was such an honor. I'm so grateful to him for allowing me this privilege. But I remember, being told, "Hey, your dad's here," and I just got so. I wasn't mad. I was disappointed that I wasn't given that same courtesy of being made important enough to show up. And I remember having my mind made up that I wasn't gonna drink, and as soon as I saw him, I was like, I'm 2 glasses of wine because I need to enjoy myself, and no one should ever feel this way. And my brother even felt bad. He was annoyed for me because he's like, he showed up for me, but he couldn't show up for you. And I'm like, bro, this has been my whole life. This has been my whole life. Knowing that the choice was made and actions do speak loud. And not only did he show up to the dowry wedding, but they had a church wedding, and he showed up for that. So pretty much, I'm the only one whose wedding he hasn't shown up for. And I don't know why that is. I have my suspicions, but I don't regret having that level of standard for even someone like him, because I now have that standard for everyone. And I want my daughters to know that it's okay to have standards, and it's okay to love you and to put you first. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click that like, subscribe, and don't forget that notification bell. Remember, love you first, all times. Ciao for now.